So I realized that it's almost Tuesday and I have not gotten my video up, and I realized it's because I was sort of chickening out that you, I guess, I don't know if lecture is the right word, lectured me about my last video and just all the wish-washiness I had and the uncertainty. And I took a lot of time last weekend. Do you hear Jasmine in the back? I took a lot of time last weekend to really reflect on just exactly why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And I think ultimately just came down to that my heart was not in that story. I brainstormed a lot of word building and a lot of the story itself, but my heart was not in it. Like, I just was not as passionate about it. And since I have switched manuscripts, I've been a lot happier. I don't know what Jasmine's doing, so hopefully that's not too distracting. Every time I talk, she starts laughing or making noise. So anyway, but once I switched manuscripts, I was a lot happier. I just had so much peace, and I had a new excitement because I really was struggling with, I know that, and you told me, and I had another friend that told me of not putting myself in a box and, not trying to push things on my manuscript, but I really felt like my heart was missing in it. It was not the same as my other stories, and it was really important to me that my heart was captured on the page. And though it had a lot of elements that I really loved personally, I don't feel it had me on the page. If I could give the book to a friend or to anyone, to a different kind of reader, and be like, hey, this is me on the page, here's my heart, I didn't feel like I would do it with that one. And that made me pause, because I want myself to be on the page. I want that emotional depth that I've had in some of my other stories to be in this one. I saved all of my notes and everything like that. I kept it, put it on my flash drive, so if I wanted to come back to it one day, that I have the notes in hand to do so, and rather than throwing them away as I have in the past, because I've been very guilty of that, especially when I'm feeling anxious about a story and I don't know why per se. So this week, since I said I switched manuscripts, I have been doing all of this research, and I am just incredibly excited. I really have a heart, I realize, for sports manga, but I want it to be Waiting for Spring, where you have your romance in there with all the guys, not a harem or reverse harem, none of that hot mess, none of that. Just that you have a girl that is working with a volleyball team, because that's what I want to read about, but working with a volleyball team, and she's in love with one of the the players and the characters. Just him. There's just him and her, that's it. But that she gets to just sort of be there and support them. Though this story that I've been brainstorming is different than that. There's a romance, but it's mainly about the main character, the girl, and her struggles and her journey as an actual volleyball player. I want to say more, but I'm unsure of what to say all about it. But I have just loved the research, and I feel like that's something personally that's very rewarding for me, that fantasy doesn't quite have, is that I can go research things and learn new things. I really love doing that. It's just very cool to me to keep learning new things, and that's something that I miss going back to school, and I've wanted to go back to school mainly just because I really enjoy the learning process, and you get that in fantasy as well, but the contemporary aspect is just very fascinating to me, especially I think after reading Kimi ni Toroke, that I have just been wanting to learn more about Japan, especially through storytelling, because there were some really cool elements that I feel were in that manga and other contemporary manga that I've read that you don't necessarily find in a non-fiction book about Japan or Tokyo or anything like that. So that was a fun realization, or not realization, because it's something I've definitely realized before, but something I finally admitted to myself, that fantasy is just not exactly where my heart is. I like those fantasy elements, but having a purely fantasy world, I just don't know if I can do it because it doesn't have that same excitement of learning something new and thinking like, how can we make a real story off of these real things to encourage other people? But I also am having like a driving desire to like want to write it just because I'm like, this is what I want to read. This has been like something on my heart for at least a year since I watched Haiku, at least, where I'm like, I want these elements and I'm not finding any fiction, manga, or novel otherwise that focus on volleyball, like a volleyball romance. I mean, there is the manga I Fell in Love After School where she becomes a volleyball manager, and I read the first chapter the other day. Jasmine just put her blanket down. That's what was falling. I was like, what is that? Anyway, but there is, I Fell in Love After School, where it's about a girl who becomes a volleyball manager, and the first chapter was pretty good. It doesn't seem as love triangle-like as I thought it was. There will be high school drama, but I've sort of, I think, admitted that to myself that, hey, if I want some of these sports manga, that some of that's going to be in there. Not so much I noticed, like, with the boy-geared manga, but definitely with the girl-geared manga. There's definitely a lot of that, because there is another volleyball manga. It's called Shoujo Fight, and I read the first chapter of that. I was not fond of the art style, but I also was, like, not fond of the drama, like, whatsoever. Like, that was, like, I don't know, some extreme drama, to me anyway. So I was like, I just want what I am looking for, like, what's in my head. And so I need to get it out, I need to write it. And that's basically just sort of where I have been this past week. I'm glad that you shared your challenge with me from your last video, because I'm glad that I actually did it, that I sent you the first chapter of the light novel that I was trying to write. That was cool, and it was interesting going back and rereading it, because I really did actually like the first chapter. It was fun, and I'm glad that now, like, switching over again, that my characters are like my characters. Like, I'm not having the same issues I was having. They feel just like real people, and I really, really love that. I did work a little bit on, I should have worn a costume, and that was really exciting because I feel like what is his name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I see it in my writing, but I can't remember what his name is. But he is who I thought he was, and I'm really, really excited about that, because he was sort of one of my favorite male characters to, like, write about, because he's just an interesting guy, and there's a little bit of a mystery surrounding him. I'm really excited about that, because hopefully, maybe, I do envision, like, his story tying in with Kinryu's, which makes me really excited. And there's a lot of cool stuff that I really just see with all of that. So yeah, that's sort of been like my week, like in an overview. The car line is starting to move, so I have to say goodbye. But I am curious, for a fantasy author, like, what kind of research do you do? Like, I mean, I know, like, any author has to do research, but, like, is there any, like, recent research that you have had to do, not just, I guess, from your own story world, but, like, from the real world that affected your story world, if that makes sense? So that is just sort of my question for this week, and I hope you are having a great day, and I look forward to seeing your video and not being lectured. Bye!